This is your video on the more detailed generic cosmological argument. This particular argument is sometimes called the causal cosmological argument. This is the second argument that Aquinas gives in your reading. And once we go through this, you'll see how this argument maps onto what Aquinas was saying in the reading. Okay, so the first premise of this argument is that the universe had a cause. And we already kind of established in the simple version why we think that, right? If yours didn't have a cause, then why is it here, right? It seems that we need to have a cause. Okay, so the universe has a cause. All right. Now, the second premise is that if the universe had a cause, the thing that caused it either would need to be caused by something else or not itself caused. Or in other words, it would need to exist without a cause. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Okay, so we have the universe. Okay, we already established the universe has a cause. Okay, it's this thing here, let's say. We don't know what this is yet, but it's the thing that caused the universe. Okay, what the second premise is saying is that this thing which caused the universe, this thing right here, it either would need to be caused by something else. Okay, so there would need to be some other further thing right here or something like that that caused this thing to occur, okay? That's the case. Or this thing, right, didn't itself have a cause. Or another way of putting it is that it would have existed without any sort of cause, okay? Maybe it was just always there, all right? Okay, so that's the second premise. I'm gonna erase this now because I don't want to go all the way down here. Let's keep writing up the arguments. It's the second premise of the argument. The third premise is that since we cannot have an infinite regress, something needs to have no cause itself. Since we cannot have an infinite regress, something needs to have no cause itself. Okay, what does that mean? All right. Well, let's think about it like this. So let's just go back to this. So we have universe. Okay, it was caused by something. All right, what's that thing? Well, we don't really know yet. Let's just say like it's just X. Okay, so X caused the universe. All right. Okay. The second premise says that either this thing had to have a cause itself or did not have any cause at all. Okay. Let's say it had a cause. All right, so this thing Y caused it. Okay. Well, guess the same thing. Does this have a cause? Let's say it does, because it seems like, well, yeah, right? How else would it come to be? Okay, so this had a cause. Let's call it Z. But notice, we just keep going on and on, right? We keep asking what caused that, what caused this, and so on and so forth. And the problem is we might end up going all the way back to infinity. Okay. Here's why that's a problem. If you go all the way back to infinity, you just keep going on and on and on, there's no first thing that caused something, right? If we're talking about infinity, right, find the first thing in infinity. You can't. That's not how infinity works, okay? So because there's no first thing in infinity, right, there's no first cause. There's no thing that started everything going, okay? But you might think, well, wait a second, though. If I'm gonna have a series of causes, surely there needs to be a first thing that started it, right? If there's no first thing, then how the heck did we get this, right? Everything needed to have a cause. It needs to have started somewhere, some first thing. But if we're talking about infinity, there's no first thing to talk about, right? Because it's infinite. So it seems like we can't have an infinite regress for that reason, because then there'd be no first cause. And if there's no first cause, then there's no causal chain to begin with because it needs to start somewhere. Well, where does it start? Well, if there's infinity, there's no starting point, right? You can't pick a starting point because it just keep going, right? So it seems like we can't have infinite regress. So what's the alternative that we have? Well, the alternative is to say, well, look, I guess something needs to have no cause itself. We need to stop somewhere, right? We keep going on, and then we just have to say, all right, this had no cause, okay? All right, so let's just say that's the case. Let's stop at Z here first. Actually, let's get rid of this. Let's just stop at X to keep it simple, okay? So this thing, we're gonna say, according to this premise, it's gonna suggest, well, this thing didn't have a cause, all right? Okay, well, if that thing didn't have a cause, what's that thing probably? Well, here's a thought. This is premise 4 of the argument here. Premise 4 says that God did not cause himself. Why do we know this? We know this because if God caused himself, God wouldn't have existed before God existed. Which doesn't make any sense. It's literally contradictory, okay? You can't have existed before you existed, okay? Right, because if God wanted to cause himself, he needed to be around to do it. But if he wasn't around to do it, he couldn't do it, and so he couldn't cause himself, okay? So, we know that God did not cause himself, okay? So what's that mean? Well, if God didn't cause himself, and nothing else did, right? And that seems to make sense, right? It doesn't seem like it would make sense to say, well, something else caused an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-being, right? If anything, nothing could possibly do that, or else they wouldn't be all-powerful, maybe, okay? In any event, God did not cause himself, okay? So, this might suggest that God maybe always existed, okay? That's one plausible way of interpreting this, okay? So God always existed, you might think, and then God started the chain of events that made the universe come to be, okay? But wait a second, if that means God is the cause of the universe, this is the conclusion of the argument, so it concludes that. So, if God caused the universe, that implies God exists. Okay. How do we get this? Well, look, if we already established that we can't have this infinite regress, and the universe had a cause, well, we need to have some uncaused thing, okay? In the Aquinas reading, there's this moving argument, but it's really similar to this causal argument. You might have heard also in maybe in media, maybe in different classes, you might have heard of the unmoved mover, right? The thing that sort of set things in motion. The unmoved mover is referring to Aquinas' first argument, actually, which is really similar to this, but not quite the same. And you'll see in your reading how it's different. But in any event, the unmoved mover idea, it's kind of like the uncaused causer, right? It's just something that was just always there, right? Or in the unmoved mover case, it's something that wasn't sort of put into motion, okay? But it sort of moved everything and made everything go. Right. But if that thing caused everything, well, it needed to have existed to make it cause everything, right? Okay, well, if that's the case, then it follows that if God caused the universe, that God exists, okay? So that's the cosmological argument for the existence of God. If you think there's a problem with it, you'll need to find out where in the premises it goes wrong, okay? Or maybe there's something wrong with the conclusion. I'll leave that up to you to decide, but in the next video we'll be looking at some objections to consider, okay? Although it is worth noting, and I'm going to probably repeat myself multiple times throughout the course saying this, but you might really like this argument, okay? And so when I look at objections, like in the next video, these objections aren't meant to be my way of telling you, like, oh, this is a bad argument. Every argument we'll look at is going to have objections, okay? It's just a question of whether or not you can overcome those objections, okay? In the next video, we'll see if you like this argument, maybe you can.